Sir, step away from the luggage. Now. The words sliced through the airport terminal like a blade. Footsteps stopped mid-stride. Conversations collapsed into silence. Even the rolling sound of suitcases seemed to fade as dozens of heads turned toward Gate 32. In the center of it all stood Marcus Hill. Early 40s, well-dressed, calm, composed. A navy blazer rested perfectly on his shoulders. Clean white sneakers. A posture that spoke of confidence without arrogance. His right hand rested lightly on the handle of a sleek black suitcase, as if it were just another ordinary moment in an exhausting day of travel. But nothing about this moment was ordinary. Across from Marcus stood two airline staff members. One clutched a radio tightly, her knuckles pale. The other pointed sharply at the suitcase, her voice raised just enough for everyone nearby to hear. "That bag doesn't belong to you," she said. "We received a report." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Some people leaned closer. Others instinctively stepped back. A few phones slipped out of pockets, cameras quietly rolling. Marcus felt it instantly, that familiar weight. Not fear, not guilt, judgment. He slowly looked down at the suitcase, then back up at the staff member accusing him. His expression didn't change. No panic. No anger, just calm. "I believe there's been a mistake," he said evenly. The word mistake seemed to irritate her. "No mistake," she snapped. "That bag was reported stolen." The word stolen landed hard. A man in the crowd shook his head. Someone whispered, "Unbelievable." Another muttered, "I knew it." Before Marcus could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. Airport security was moving in fast. The crowd widened, forming a silent circle around him. Marcus didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply stood there, calm, steady, unshaken, as security stopped beside him. In that moment, most people thought they knew exactly how this would end. They thought they'd seen this story before. But what they didn't know was that Marcus Hill was about to turn the entire situation upside down. Not with anger, not with force, but with a calm response that would leave everyone watching in stunned silence. Phones quietly came out. Not openly, not boldly, just enough to record. Someone whispered, "I knew something was off." Another passenger shook his head slowly, disappointment written across his face. Marcus felt it immediately, that familiar pressure pressing in from all sides. Not guilt, not fear, assumption. He had just stepped off a delayed flight after a brutal 3-day business trip. Meetings back-to-back, red-eye connections, barely any sleep. All he wanted was food, a shower, and his own bed. Instead, he was standing in the middle of an airport terminal, accused in front of strangers who had already decided who he was. "Sir," one of the airline staff said sharply, her tone clipped and impatient, "you need to explain how you got that luggage." Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't react the way everyone expected him to. Instead, he placed both hands calmly on the suitcase handle, slow, deliberate movements, and spoke evenly. "I checked this bag myself in Chicago. Flight 482. Tag number ends in 917. The staff exchanged quick looks. "That doesn't prove anything," the woman replied, her voice louder now, defensive. Security stepped closer, positioning themselves on either side of Marcus. The crowd shifted again, creating space, not for comfort but for spectacle. "Sir," the officer said, "do you have ID?" Marcus nodded. "Of course." But before reaching into his jacket, he paused. "May I ask something first?" he said quietly. The officer hesitated. "Go ahead." Marcus looked around the terminal. "Is the person who reported this bag stolen here?" Silence. The staff member glanced around, then avoided eye contact. "No." Marcus nodded slowly, as if he already knew the answer. "Then let's take a breath," he said calmly, "and verify the facts." The officer studied him for a moment, not as a suspect, but as a man who wasn't afraid. "All right," the officer said. "Let's see your documentation." Marcus pulled out his phone first. "This is my boarding pass," he said, holding up the screen. "Seat 3A. Flight 482. He swiped once. "And this is my checked luggage receipt." The officer leaned in. The numbers matched the airline system. Still, hesitation lingered. That suitcase looks identical to another passenger's, the airline staff insisted. We can't ignore that. Marcus nodded. You're right, he said. Many bags look identical. That's why baggage tags exist. The officer turned to the staff. Can we scan the tag? One of the staff members hesitated. The scanner's not here. Marcus gestured calmly toward the desk behind them. There's one right there. The crowd murmured again. The officer retrieved the scanner and crouched slightly, bringing it to the side of the suitcase. A small red light blinked. Beep. Nothing happened. A woman in the crowd exhaled sharply. The staff member crossed her arms, almost relieved. See, she said. Marcus didn't react. Try again, the officer said. The scanner beeped once more. This time, the screen lit up. Match confirmed. For a moment, no one spoke. The terminal felt frozen in time. The officer straightened up slowly. This bag is registered to Marcus Hill, he said clearly. The airline staff member's face drained of color. I'm sorry, she stammered. Someone said. Marcus gently raised his hand. It's all right, he said, but I'd like to understand something. She swallowed. Yes. Why was I accused publicly before verification? He asked calmly. Why wasn't this checked first? No answer came. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Passengers looked away. Phones lowered. A supervisor arrived moments later, clearly briefed and already flustered. Mr. Hill, she said, her tone suddenly respectful. We sincerely apologize for this incident. This does not reflect our values. Marcus nodded politely. I appreciate the apology, he said, but I hope this moment leads to change. The supervisor nodded quickly. Absolutely. Marcus turned slightly toward the crowd. This wasn't about a suitcase, he said, his voice steady but firm. It was about assumptions made before facts. No one argued. No one laughed. No one whispered. He picked up the suitcase, its weight suddenly lighter than before. As he walked away, a woman quietly said, I'm sorry that happened to you. Marcus offered a small smile. Thank you. Outside the terminal, he paused for a moment, breathing in deeply. He hadn't defended himself with anger. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't given them the reaction they expected. He had let truth, calm, and dignity do the work. And everyone who witnessed it walked away changed, whether they wanted to admit it or not. Because some lessons don't need shouting. They just need to be seen. The crowd expected tension, raised voices, resistance, chaos. Instead, they witnessed something far more unsettling. Composure. Marcus calmly unlocked his phone, the movement slow and deliberate, as if he had nothing to hide and nowhere to run. He opened his airline app and held the screen steady. Here's my boarding pass, he said evenly. Seat 3A. Flight 482. He swiped once. And here's my checked baggage receipt. He turned the phone toward the airline staff. The numbers lined up perfectly. For a brief moment, doubt flickered across the woman's face. But pride, or fear, pushed it aside. That bag is identical to another passenger's, she insisted, louder now. We can't just assume it's yours. Marcus offered a small smile. Not sarcastic, not mocking, not angry, just patient. Most luggage looks the same, he replied. That's exactly why tags exist. A few people in the crowd nodded quietly. The security officer stepped closer, studying Marcus carefully, not like a criminal, but like a man testing a story against the truth. What's inside the bag, he asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. 2 tailored suits, he said, a presentation laptop, and a leather folder with my company logo. The officer paused. Which company? For the first time since the confrontation began, Marcus reached inside his jacket. The motion caused a slight ripple in the crowd. Shoulders stiffened, breath held. But Marcus moved slowly. Carefully, he removed a business card and held it out. Marcus Hill, Regional Director, Horizon Aeronautics. The officer took the card. Read it. Then read it again. He looked up at Marcus. Then at the airline staff. Then back at the card, as if recalibrating everything he thought he knew about this situation. The staff member shifted uncomfortably. Her grip on the radio loosened. The officer cleared his throat. Let's scan the tag, he said. A staff member hurried to retrieve a portable scanner. The terminal felt unusually quiet now, like the air itself was waiting. The scanner was pressed against the side of the suitcase. Beep. Nothing. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The woman folded her arms, relief creeping into her expression. "I told you," she said softly. Marcus didn't react. The officer frowned. "Try again." The scanner beeped a second time. 1 second passed. 2. Then the screen lit up. "Match confirmed." The words glowed brightly. Unavoidable. Undeniable. The terminal fell into complete silence. No whispers. No phones moving. No judgment left to hide behind. The officer straightened, his tone shifting instantly. "This bag belongs to Mr. Marcus Hill," he announced clearly. The airline staff member's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I'm sorry," she finally said. "We had a report, and—" Marcus gently raised his hand. "Before we move on," he said calmly, "I'd like to ask something. Everyone listen now. Why was I accused publicly," he continued, "before a simple verification?" The question hung heavy in the air. No one answered. The officer looked down briefly. The staff member avoided eye contact. Passengers slowly lowered their phones. A supervisor rushed over moments later, concern etched across her face. "Mr. Hill," she said, "on behalf of the airline, I sincerely apologize. This is not how we handle situations." Marcus nodded. "I appreciate the apology," he said, "but I hope next time facts come before assumptions." The supervisor nodded quickly. "Absolutely." Marcus picked up his suitcase. As he turned to leave, a woman in the crowd whispered, "That was powerful." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to, because sometimes the loudest statement isn't made with words. It's made with calm dignity, in a room full of people who expected something else. The staff member's face drained of color. I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice suddenly small. "We just had a report, and—" Marcus gently raised his hand, not to silence her, but to slow the moment. "I understand protocols," he said evenly. "I respect them." The terminal was completely quiet now. "What I don't understand," Marcus continued, "is why I was accused publicly without a single step of verification." No one spoke. Passengers who had been recording moments earlier slowly lowered their phones, eyes shifting from curiosity to discomfort. The excitement they had expected never came. Instead, something heavier settled in the air. The security officer cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, his tone noticeably different now, "you're free to go, and we apologize for the inconvenience." Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, but he didn't walk away. Not yet. Instead, he turned slightly toward the small crowd that had gathered, people who had watched, whispered, judged, and recorded. "I want to say something," Marcus said calmly. No one interrupted him. "This wasn't about a suitcase," he continued, "and it wasn't about procedure." People leaned in. "This happens when assumptions replace facts," he said. "When calm professionalism is replaced with fear. When someone decides a story before asking a question." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Every person there felt them. Marcus turned back toward the airline staff, his expression steady, not accusatory. "I hope next time," he said, "you check first." The staff member nodded silently, her eyes lowered. Moments later, a woman in a dark blazer hurried toward the group, the airline supervisor. Her posture was formal, her expression serious, but her voice was respectful. "Mr. Hill," she said, "I've been briefed on what happened. On behalf of the airline, I sincerely apologize. This does not reflect our values or our training." Marcus listened. "I appreciate the apology," he replied, "but apologies matter most when they lead to change." The supervisor nodded firmly. "They will." Around them, the crowd had completely changed. No one whispered now. No one recorded. A man who had earlier shaken his head in judgment now stared at the floor. A woman clasped her bag tightly, clearly unsettled by how quickly she had assumed the worst. One passenger quietly spoke up. "That took courage," she said softly. Marcus offered a small smile. "Thank you." He reached down and lifted his suitcase. The simple act felt symbolic, reclaiming something that had never stopped being his, yet had been questioned so easily. As he walked away, the space parted naturally this time. not out of suspicion, but respect. Outside the terminal, Marcus paused near the exit. The late afternoon light spilled across the glass doors. He took a slow breath. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't demanded anything. He hadn't reacted the way they expected him to. He had responded with dignity. Behind him, the supervisor quietly instructed the staff, her tone firm. New procedures. Clear reminders. Verification first. Assumptions last. The moment would be discussed in meetings. Replayed in minds. Remembered by passengers long after their flights landed. Marcus stepped outside and adjusted his blazer. For him, it was just another reminder that sometimes the strongest response isn't anger or outrage. It's calm truth delivered in a room that wasn't ready for it. And for everyone who witnessed it, the lesson lingered long after the terminal returned to its usual noise. Character is revealed not when things go wrong, but in how we respond when they do. Marcus picked up his suitcase and began walking toward the exit. No applause followed him. No arguments. No dramatic reactions. Just silence, the heavy kind that comes after realization finally settles in. People stepped aside without being asked. Not out of suspicion anymore, but respect. The same eyes that had watched him with doubt now followed him with something closer to reflection. As Marcus passed through the crowd, a woman near the gate spoke softly, almost embarrassed. "I'm sorry that happened to you." Marcus paused for half a second and offered a polite smile. "Thank you." Nothing more needed to be said. Outside the terminal, the noise of the airport rushed back. Engines humming, announcements echoing, wheels rolling over pavement. Marcus stopped just beyond the glass doors and took a deep breath, letting the tension finally leave his shoulders. He thought about the moment again. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't argued. He hadn't demanded respect. He had simply remained calm when calm was the hardest thing to choose. For Marcus, this wasn't a victory. It was a reminder that dignity doesn't need volume, that truth doesn't need force, and that sometimes the strongest response is refusing to become what others expect you to be. Later that day, the airline issued an internal apology. Emails were sent. Meetings were called. New training was announced, focused on bias awareness and proper verification procedures. Policies changed, but Marcus didn't tweet about it, didn't upload a video, didn't write a long post demanding attention. He didn't need to, because his response had already spoken louder than any statement ever could. Back inside the terminal, people would carry that moment with them. The quiet confrontation, the calm man, the assumptions that unraveled in real time. And long after the flight boards were updated and the crowd moved on, one memory remained clear. The moment when accusation met composure, when judgment met patience, and when calm dignity dismantled assumption without a single word raised in anger. That was the moment no one there would ever forget.